So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and feel free to make a comment throughout. It's for everyone. It's to support people in general. Some of the things that I'm mentioning, they are ideas that people would already have, but there's a few that are a bit unique, and I'm just mentioning all of them for the sake of completeness. So with respect to procrastination, I made a small publication on it just from a student group, and a bit of poetry as well as tips for handling it, because it's something that will come across our entire life, and it's good to get a heads up on it. So this is a bit of the poem that I made. So it goes like this. Procrastination is our relaxation station, our inverted prioritization of what's fun before what must be done. What's around becomes our fixation, rather than goal number one being our dedication. We show overconfidence in assuming task facilitation until we create a habit of inaction. We wonder why each nation has it, but to delay work is a part of our blueprint. Our inaction lasts until our final reaction of being stressed with an unrealistic expectation, makes us discouraged to the point of debilitation. We suffer a punishment and make a proclamation to never repeat the temptation, but it will happen again. After all, procrastination is the design of a human. So very simply, to summarize procrastination, based on this poem, it's to simply delay something, to not make progress in something because of the type of resistance or type of discomfort that you have towards the action. And something that's important to know, procrastination is not just the act of delaying work at, say, some business over here shown on the left. It's not the act of not working. It could also be the act of delaying anything in general. That includes being a well-balanced individual that might take part in social activities. If you're saying, oh no, I'll hang out with people another time, I don't feel ready to take part in something, that's it's also a form of procrastination, because procrastination is not just to delay work, it's to delay anything that's important in life. And it's your imagination that determines whether or not it is something that should be done or not. So at some point, you'll have to come across what is important and what is not. So the first steps for understanding procrastination and how to prevent it is to first define it. What is it? It's to delay something in general, not just work, but perhaps social activities. So you could then acknowledge what type of procrastination you have. That could be social type and what specific type, as well as perhaps written work or doing exercise, trying to be active. All of those are things that we could delay work and progress in. And you can make a decision at that point. Do I want it in my life? Is it important to me? Or can I just let it go? And would I be fine with that? And this is perfectly fine, because your imagination determines what your goals are, and that should be your personal life purpose. You follow it, and if someone else wants you to do something, that could technically be procrastination towards your actual personal goal. But there's also making sure you have finances and whatnot, so that kind of gets in the way of all of our lives. It's important to make a compromise at some point. So if the work that you have is important for your survival in some way, then we try to find ways of making it approachable. So the rest of what I'm going to say, the 10 topics, as was listed in the Eventbrite page, these are the 10 tips in general that I have for reversing procrastination, and I included a bonus one. So here, the very basic one, having a timeline to gauge your progress. We always have the short-term goals. We work in terms of that, but sometimes we're a bit blind when we work based on deadlines alone. It does give a bit of peace to work in the present and just work at one deadline and then another deadline. But life is it's something that you may not get a chance to control that much of. So when you reach your 50s, 60s, it may be too late to take part in something that you love. So it's important to look at the timeline of your life, realize go by fast, it's short. So life, it's just about 2.5 billion seconds or 2 billion seconds. And if you were to have say 100 of your life, you still would not be able to pay the US national debt. That's how short your life is. If you had an ability to count every cell in your body, which is 70 trillion cells in our human body, if you tried to just count them 1 second at a time, you would die at about 10,000 times before you could even reach it. You would lack about 10,000 times as much time as needed to count all the cells in your body. Short life is, and about 40% of it is spent sleeping or not with the maximum consciousness because we're too old. So really it's important to gauge that there's also a timeline for your life, and really do the things that you love early on. Don't be investing in money too much or enduring a job just to get money. Try to make sure that you love the job so that you're never working a day in your life. So the second thing that's important to do, subdivide any tasks that you have so that it's more manageable. So when life gives you a giant cookie, like in this case, you could just try to eat it, but you could also subdivide it into little chunks so that it's more enjoyable and you could actually accomplish the thing at the end. So this could be thought out in every single scenario possible. So as I mentioned, can you do this in real life? You can. Every single task that we do can be subdivided. And when you subdivide it, it's now approachable. So if you have an essay to write, you could have one job of yours to simply open up a Word document. That already is a decision away from social media, away from Twitter or Facebook. It's a decision to open up the Word document, and then eventually you'll have the habit to at least think of the Word document, see the Word document there, and what you see around you triggers what your thoughts will be. So eventually you could ease into the process of working on your essay. There's also sitting upward, not sleeping on your bed, because that naturally just makes you fall asleep and lose the ability to put effort into things. So sitting upward, that helps. And when you're starting to type, we oftentimes delay typing because we want to think of the perfect sentence, but the perfect sentence never comes. You just have to write something, and your brain will naturally edit what you have written, and then you will make progress of sentences. No one comes up with a perfect sentence, or it's very rare, and then you start typing. You work as you go, type in something, and it could be complete trash, and then you'll at least be in the process of writing. And oftentimes you could just write a rough draft, do it one sentence at a time, one paragraph at a time, and then do final editing. And this process of dividing the task into parts can also be applied to exercise, or finding ways to socialize, finding a new job. There's always steps that could be made. In the case of exercise, it could be you approaching a habit here, could be you just putting weights in front of you, or having a certain plan that involves, maybe I'll do one push-up. It's not that hard, one push-up in one day, and then I'll set up to do more and more, and then a full set by the end of the week, and then I might get them in the hang of it afterwards. So it's always important to think of dividing the task. Now, this is the one topic that tends to be what people don't normally think of. It's the most deep topic that could help with preventing procrastination, but it's also a bit harsh. This is a self-hypnosis process. Hypnosis is to have semi-conscious guidance of your thoughts. And sometimes someone else could drive hypnosis for you, but you could do it for yourself by simply imagining something that then gears your thoughts to go a certain way. Now, you could imagine a dystopia, the greatest pain in your life, or the saddest possible outcome that could take place, or just something that really hurts you, and deeply go into that. You're now in that world. You could do this while you're closing your eyes so that you don't just embed yourself and maybe experience, and then pause, let go of that dystopia, and then you could return back to life slowly and revisit the problem that you have, and you may realize it is actually attainable, it is actually possible, and I could actually do this. It's physically or mentally impossible. It's something that I could actually do. You could consider the example of imagining someone that doesn't have food. There's photos out there of people that are starving to death. They have bodies that are bloated. They're dying. They're receiving a challenge that they cannot succeed in. That's what it means to not be able to do something. And there's some terrifying photos that I've seen. People, there's a child starving to death, and then there's a vulture just waiting to eat it after it passes away. This is something that, it gives us pain just to think about. But when you see that a task that actually cannot be successfully completed to live, you cannot even live, see that and then go back to your life, and you might realize the task that I have is tough. It's work related, but it is actually possible. I could actually do this. And the reason why self-hypnosis is something that could be useful is the fact that you transitioning from the worst state to this pretty bad state, but not as bad state, can create the feeling of joy, specifically towards what you were doing, therefore make it a bit more manageable. So the reason why this self-hypnosis process works is because happiness and pain, they are imagined experiences. Even though it's based on the reality of your survival, it could still be controlled by the thoughts that you have in your head. So if you have thoughts that are extremely bad, extremely harsh, and then you go back to real life, then you go from a previous state that was incredibly bad, and you go back to the normal state, which was still quite bad as it is, but it creates the process of joy because you know that your situation wasn't actually that bad. It was still bad, but you might actually be able to succeed and live and maybe get something beneficial out of it. So it's important to know that pain and pleasure are based on relativity, and you could use a bit of that to control your experience while you do your work. That way you could exercise the control of mental stability and happiness so that the process feels like maybe a bit of a joyous one. Now you enjoy working because I actually have prospects. I have the ability to not only make a difference, not only for me, but for others, and that makes me happy. I have the ability to become a successful business person at the end of this, or I have the ability to actually live. Like this task that I have isn't death itself. So it's just important to consider this, to exercise control over our own thoughts. Hypnosis could be a part of that. So there's other semi-conscious aspects to life that could influence our work habits. That includes working in a different environment. So if you're at home, it could be comfortable. It might be the perfect way to work. It's also very accessible. And the downside to this could be, it could be too comfortable. Therefore, you may relax a bit too much. Certainly, if you're in your bedroom where you normally sleep, you may fall asleep instead of working. So that's always a fear. In the library, you may find that you're a bit more stressed because there's people around. They're like looking at you. You don't want to look like you're just procrastinating while you're there, right? So you're more likely to work here, but if there's too many friends around, especially if it's a school-related library, then you're going to meet too many people, and then you're going to end up talking instead of working. So it helps to sometimes switch to a non-comfortable area that is isolated. That could be like an empty room, but even if those aren't accessible, a staircase of pretty much any academic institution would have this type of quiet area where you're still not that comfortable, because comfort can sometimes be a problem. It makes you just not work. So the downside to having this is that it may not accommodate all the things that you need. So then having an isolated library room would be what's beneficial. And in those rooms, you may feel a bit numb because there's not enough sensation. So it feels a bit like torture. So you can't do that for too long. You still have to go back to the other environments and appreciate those. So a couple rather basic things, but it's important to mention at least. Make sure that your goals in life are not forced by the government or by superiors. Make sure that everything that technically your superior asked you to do is something that you still loved. Otherwise, it may not be the perfect job for you. So if you didn't like the processes that your job involves, you could consider switching, but maybe this life doesn't have that much flexibility to accommodate that. It's important to realize that habits can then be a way to accommodate a form of happiness. And if you're at a job for a long enough time, then you'll learn to appreciate it over time. Even though it does get boring, you could still learn to have leadership possibilities for it. So it's good to have a job that you just happen to coincidentally love. Even though they're giving you orders to do something, you should still love the whole process so that you're never really working, you're just living. So that's what work should be. It shouldn't be something that you're forced to do. It should be something that is a part of your life, because the majority of your life is actually spent in this working phase. Your retirement age and before working age, they're kind of short and they're a bit compromised in terms of your own consciousness. This is your peak, and it has to be something that you enjoy. Make sure that your work is not considered work, it's considered life and you love it. So yeah, make sure that it's based on the intrinsic aspects of the work and not just the desire that comes from things linked to it. So maybe there's people that love the idea of pride or money linked with being a doctor or lawyer, but then when they're there, they realize it's only the money that I want. It's not the actual process of doing medicine that I love. So then that could be an issue. But it's still good to make money because it does give you the stability for happiness in the end. So it's good to have a balance of both at some point. So habits with respect to studying, living, doing exercise are also a tool for happiness. The more that you engage in something, the more that your brain expects it. And when you give your body what you expect, you end up satisfying happiness for your mind. So when your mind expects to have a certain task done or a certain activity done at a certain time of the day, then you should probably do it. And if you're changing tasks, make sure that it makes sense. So if you're going to have like a fitness routine, the first time that you try it at a certain part of the day or at a certain part of the week, it's going to feel like hell. It's going to be tough. But the more you do it, the more your body and mind expects it. So then you're going to be able to accommodate the task. This is not just a mental, psychological difference, it is also a physical difference. Your body has cells that are more capable molecularly of handling exercise based on having more hormones like osteocalcin or lower amounts of sclerostin, higher amounts of energetic output capable for your muscles. This makes your body physically more prepared for the exercise. So then it's not as much of a problem. Your body feels happy with the exercise, and mentally your mind is also prepared for it. It's not just a psychological thing, it's also physical. And to a certain extent, studying and the physical ability to sit down and discipline yourself in a certain area for a long time, that's also something that will be physically prepared for by your body as well as mentally. And habits will make that physical and mental preparation for your body to learn to appreciate the task. And it's not going to be just for studying, it's for, or exercise, it's for pretty much anything that you do. You will develop a habit to learn to make it happy. It only works to a certain extent though, but you will eventually be happy as you do something for too long. Now, if your habits that normally make you happy eventually become boring because you've done it so much, then that means that you could lead in something. So if research is too boring for you, everything is just not enthusiastic enough, then you could do a presentation to guide people on something. And maybe it's not even exactly your research, but it's just philosophy that you've had. And it's kind of what I'm doing now. Sometimes things were a bit boring and I wasn't stimulated enough. So then I decided to make new things, new challenges for myself so that I'm not bored, because boredom is one of the main reasons for procrastination. And it's something that you can clearly control, because it's the lack of an issue, and you just need to bring more to the table and then you could do it. And people will definitely appreciate you for it because you're doing more work. Or it shouldn't be work, it should be more living. So you could also raise or lower the number of goals in general. It doesn't have to be a leadership position, but you could just take on more tasks so that you're not bored. And if ever you take on too many tasks, then you have to realize you are going to overwhelm yourself, and then you're going to start procrastinating. So there's a balance of the number of goals. That's very basic stuff. Afterwards, it's good to consider if none of these options work, maybe it's the venue of work itself. If nothing is making you happy, sometimes it's just the environment. Maybe there's people that are bullying you. You can't blame yourself, and there's only so much that you could do. Sometimes moving on to the next step helps. And even when you're looking for a new job, there's steps to finding it. You could subdivide it. Looking on those sites that have jobs available, talking to friends, taking time to talk with friends that could give opportunities or ideas for you for new positions to work. And lastly, this is the full support system that could help you to always maintain accomplishments in life. You should always have people of these 4 circles in your life. That way you have a complete and balanced set of thoughts to accomplish things. This includes having a teacher or a role model, someone that you don't compete with, but that is always there to kind of support you or tell you right from wrong, and that you look up to, that you're inspired by. It makes you get up in the morning and be like, yes, I want to do this. That's one important person to have in your life. A competitor, so that in your process of becoming that person or attaining that goal, every day you're looking to your competitor and see if you're equal to them, or you're at least at a close state, so that you're not falling behind. So this helps with the short-term goals. Long-term goals are basically the teacher, whatever you're looking up to. The competitor helps with short-term goals and maintaining your activity. And it helps to have a companion, someone that's just there, that's supportive. That way you don't just have negative influence from the stress of a competitor. Have people that are there to just give you positive feedback whenever you're feeling down. And it helps to also have a student, someone that is beneath you, that is asking questions, that makes you look at your entire life in a different way, so that you end up thinking more critically and solving problems that you probably would not have thought of if you were just looking forward the entire time. When you have someone like a student, it changes you. It also makes you a bit more humble and try to help people in need. So this full support system, just make sure that you have that in life. That way it kind of gears you in a nice way. It makes sure that you have people of support, but also people that push you, keep on going. So yeah, this is all that I have to mention. And if you have any questions, what is spoken about is here, and you can always send an email as well. And yeah, feel free to ask anything. I can move to any slide if ever you need a refresher. Most questions I'm assuming might be about the hypnosis part, but yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to ask.